Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to talk about a guy from the ancient world, but his story, his ideas, wow, they were so powerful they've been echoing for nearly 2,000 years. His name was Ignatius of Antioch.
But before we get into who he was, I want to ask you something. Just think about it for a second. What ideas are actually worth dying for? Not just something you believe in, but something you would literally give your life for.
For Ignatius, this wasn't some philosophical question. The answer he came to, the ideas he wouldn't back down from, led him straight into an arena in Rome where he was sentenced to die by wild animals. So the big question is, why? What could possibly be worth that?
To really get why he died, we have to understand how he lived. His story isn't just about those final, dramatic moments. It's really all about the journey that got him there.
So let's set the scene. We're in Antioch, a huge, bustling city in the Roman Empire. And right in the middle of it is Ignatius. He's a bishop, a key leader in this new Christian movement. Now, you have to remember, this was a time when Christians were viewed with some serious suspicion. To the Romans, your loyalty was to the emperor, period. This whole new thing with its loyalty to one god you couldn't even see, yeah, that was a problem.
All right, so here's a quick look at his life. He was born around 35 AD. He becomes a Christian during the reign of Emperor Nero. You know, that Nero, famous for his persecutions. So right from the start, he's in a high-stakes world. Later, under Emperor Trajan, he becomes the Bishop of Antioch, which was a huge deal. But being a leader like that, it basically put a target on his back, leading to his martyrdom around 110 AD.
Okay, so what were these powerful ideas he was pushing? What was he teaching that was so important to him but so dangerous to the empire? It really boils down to three big concepts. First up, this big word, Christology. For Ignatius, this was absolutely foundational. He hammered home the idea that Jesus was both fully God and fully human. See, at the time, you had different groups arguing, oh, he was just a spirit, or no, he was just a man. Ignatius said, no, it's both. This dual nature was a radical idea for unity, and it really shaped how early Christians understood the very heart of their faith.
Second, church government. You know, Ignatius looked around and saw a bunch of scattered, pretty vulnerable communities. His solution? Get organized. He argued for a clear structure, with a single bishop in charge of each local church. Now for him, this wasn't about a power trip. It was about survival, protecting their beliefs and keeping everyone unified. But you can imagine how Rome saw this. It looked a lot like someone was building a parallel government, a whole other source of authority.
And third, eschatology. Basically the belief that there's a future judgment day where everybody, and I mean everybody, is held accountable for their life. Now you can see how this would give a person an incredible amount of conviction, right? If you truly believe you're going to face a final judgment from a higher power, well, what an emperor thinks of you suddenly doesn't seem so important. It completely changes how you look at persecution, and even death itself.
So here's the bottom line. You take his Christology, his ideas on church structure, and his belief in a final judgment, they were all tools for one core mission: unity. He just wanted all Christians to be on the same page, under one common faith with a clear structure. That was the whole game.
And, well, there's the irony. The very ideas that made him such a great unifier for the Christians were exactly what made him a target for the Romans. His success was his downfall.
So during another wave of persecutions under Emperor Trajan, Ignatius gets arrested. They put him in chains and march him all the way to Rome for a public execution. But here's the most amazing part of the story. It's on this journey, this death march, that he writes a series of letters to different churches. And these letters, they're the reason we know his ideas today. They're what made him immortal.
Which brings us to the big question. So what? Why does his story from almost 2,000 years ago still matter? What's his actual, tangible legacy?
And this table just lays it out so clearly. Those letters he wrote on his way to die, they became foundational texts, making him one of the early church fathers. His argument for that bishop-led structure, it directly influenced how major traditions like the Eastern Orthodox Church are run to this day. And his work in Antioch helped turn it into a powerhouse for early Christianity. You can draw a straight line from his actions to things we still see in the world today.
So we end up right back where we started, with this man walking toward his own death. Just think about that. Ignatius wrote his most important ideas while he was in chains. He wasn't just willing to die for his beliefs, he used his final moments to make sure those beliefs would live on without him. So what does that teach us about the real power of conviction?